Ever wondered how Islamic inheritance works? Let's find out. In Islam, inheritance is a balanced system to ensure fairness among family members. Each heir gets a specific share based on their relationship to the deceased. When it comes to punishment, Islamic law emphasizes justice, mercy, and the intention behind actions. Prophet Muhammad taught that the purpose is to deter wrongdoing and promote a just society. Stay tuned for more insights. Volume 8, Book 80, number 716, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah. I became sick, so Allah's apostle and Abu Bakr came on foot to pay me a visit. When they came, I was unconscious. Allah's apostle performed ablution and he poured over me the water of his ablution. And I came to my senses and said, O Allah's apostle, what shall I do regarding my property? How shall I distribute it? The Prophet did not reply till the divine verses of inheritance were revealed. Volume 8, Book 80, number 717, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, Beware of suspicion, for it is the worst of false tales, and don't look for the other's faults, and don't spy, and don't hate each other, and don't cut your relations with one another. O Allah's slaves, be brothers. See Hadith number 90. Volume 8, Book 80, number 718, narrated by Aisha, Fatima, and Al-Abbas came to Abu Bakr, seeking their share from the property of Allah's apostle, and at that time they were asking for their land at Fadak and their share from Khaybar. Abu Bakr said to them, I have heard from Allah's apostle saying, Our property cannot be inherited, and whatever we leave is to be spent in charity, but the family of Muhammad may take their provisions from this property. Abu Bakr added, By Allah, I will not leave the procedure I saw Allah's apostle following during his lifetime concerning this property. Therefore Fatima left Abu Bakr and did not speak to him till she died. Volume 8, Book 80, number 719, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet said, Our apostle's property should not be inherited, and whatever we leave is to be spent in charity. Volume 8, Book 80, number 720, narrated by Malik bin Aus. I went and entered upon Umar, his doorman. Yarfa came saying, Uthman, Abdurrahman, Az-Zubair and Saad are asking your permission to see you. May I admit them? Umar said yes, so he admitted them. Then he came again and said, May I admit Ali and Abbas? He said, Yes. Abbas said, O chief of the believers, judge between me and this man, Ali. Umar said, I beseech you by Allah by whose permission both the heaven and the earth exist. Do you know that Allah's apostle said, the apostle's property will not be inherited, and whatever we leave after our death is to be spent in charity. And by that, Allah's apostle meant himself. The group said, No doubt, he said so. Umar then faced Ali and Abbas and said, Do you both know that Allah's apostle said that? They replied, No doubt. He said so. Umar said, So let me talk to you about this matter. Allah favored his apostle with something of this fai, that is booty won by the Muslims at war without fighting, which he did not give to anybody else. Allah said, And what Allah gave to his apostle fai booty, to do all things, 59.6. And so that property was only for Allah's apostle. Yet by Allah he neither gathered that property for himself, nor withheld it from you, but he gave its income to you, and distributed it among you till there remained the present property, out of which the Prophet used to spend the yearly maintenance for his family. And whatever used to remain, he used to spend it where Allah's property is spent, that is in charity, etc. Allah's apostle followed that throughout his life. Now I beseech you by Allah, do you know all that? They said yes. Umar then said to Ali and Abbas, I beseech you by Allah, do you know that? Both of them said yes. Umar added, And when the Prophet died, Abu Bakr said, I am the successor of Allah's apostle, and took charge of that property, and managed it in the same way as Allah's apostle did. Then I took charge of this property for 2 years, during which I managed it as Allah's apostle, and Abu Bakr did. Then you both, Ali and Abbas, came to talk to me, bearing the same claim and presenting the same case. O Abbas, you came to me asking for your share from the property of your nephew, and this man, Ali, came to me, asking for the share of his wife from the property of her father. I said, If you both wish, I will give that to you on that condition. That is, that you would follow the way of the Prophet and Abu Bakr, and as I, Umar, have done in managing it. Now both of you seek of me a verdict other than that? Lo, by Allah, by whose permission both the heaven and the earth exist, I will not give any verdict other than that till the hour is established. If you are unable to manage it, then return it to me, and I will be sufficient to manage it on your behalf. Volume 8, Book 80, number 721, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "Not even a single dinar of my property should be distributed after my death to my inheritors, but whatever I leave excluding the provision for my wives and my servants should be spent in charity." Volume 8, Book 80, number 722, narrated by Urwa Aisha said, when Allah's apostle died, his wives intended to send Uthman to Abu Bakr, asking him for their share of the inheritance. Then Aisha said to them, "Didn't Allah's apostle say, our apostle's property is not to be inherited, and whatever we leave is to be spent in charity?" Volume 8, Book 80, number 723, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "I am more closer to the believers than their own selves, so whoever of them dies while being in debt and leaves nothing for its repayment, then we are to pay his debts on his behalf, and whoever, among the believers, dies leaving some property, then that property is for his heirs." Volume 8, Book 80, number 724, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, "Give the fara'id, the shares of the inheritance that are prescribed in the Quran, to those who are entitled to receive it. Then whatever remains should be given to the closest male relative of the deceased." Volume 8, Book 80, number 725, narrated by Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas. I was stricken by an ailment that led me to the verge of death. The Prophet came to pay me a visit. I said, "O Allah's apostle, I have much property and no heir except my single daughter. Shall I give 2/3 of my property in charity?" He said, "No." I said, "Half of it?" He said, "No." I said, "1/3 of it?" He said, "You may do so. The 1/3 is also too much, for it is better for you to leave your offspring wealthy than to leave them poor, asking others for help. And whatever you spend, for Allah's sake, you will be rewarded for it, even for a morsel of food which you may put in the mouth of your wife." I said, "O Allah's apostle, will I remain behind and fail to complete my emigration?" The Prophet said, "If you are left behind after me, whatever good deeds you will do for Allah's sake, that will upgrade you and raise you high. Maybe you will have long life so that some people may benefit by you, and others, the enemies, be harmed by you." But Allah's apostle felt sorry for Sa'd bin Khawla as he died in Mecca. Sufyan, a sub-narrator, said that Sa'd bin Khawla was a man from the tribe of Bani, Amir bin Lu'ay. Volume 8, Book 80, number 726, narrated by Al-Aswad bin Yazid. Mu'ad bin Jabal came to us in Yemen as a tutor and a ruler, and we, the people of Yemen, asked him about the distribution of the property of a man who had died leaving a daughter and a sister. Mu'ad gave the daughter 1/2 of the property and gave the sister the other half. Volume 8, Book 80, number 727, narrated by Ibn Abbas. Allah's apostle said, "Give the fara'id, shares prescribed in the Quran, to those who are entitled to receive it, and whatever remains should be given to the closest male relative of the deceased." Volume 8, Book 80, number 728, narrated by Huzail bin Shirabil. Abu Musa was asked regarding the inheritance of a daughter, a son's daughter, and a sister. He said, "The daughter will take 1/2 and the sister will take 1/2. If you go to Ibn Masud, he will tell you the same." Ibn Masud was asked and was told of Abu Musa's verdict. Ibn Masud then said, "If I give the same verdict, I would stray and would not be of the rightly guided. The verdict I will give in this case will be the same as the Prophet did. That is, 1/2 is for daughter, and 1/6 for the son's daughter. That is, both shares make 2/3 of the total property, and the rest is for the sister." Afterwards, we came to Abu Musa and informed him of Ibn Mas'ud's verdict, whereupon he said, "So, do not ask me for verdicts, as long as this learned man is among you." Volume 8, Book 80, number 729, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, "Give the fara'id, the shares prescribed in the Quran, to those who are entitled to receive it, and then whatever remains should be given to the closest male relative of the deceased." Volume 8, Book 80, number 730, narrated by Ibn Abbas, the person about whom Allah's apostle said, "If I were to take a Khalil from this nation, my followers, then I would have taken him, that is Abu Bakr. But the Islamic Brotherhood is better, or said good, regarded a grandfather as the father himself in inheritance." Volume 8, Book 80, number 731, narrated by Ibn Abbas. During the early days of Islam, the inheritance used to be given to one's offspring and legacy used to be bequeathed to the parents. Then Allah cancelled what he wished from that order and decreed that the male should be given the equivalent of the portion of 2 females, and for the parents 1/6 for each of them, and for one's wife 1/8, if the deceased has children, and 1/4 if he has no children. For one's husband 1/2, if the deceased has no children, and 1/4, if she has children. Volume 8, Book 80, number 732, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's Apostle gave the judgment that a male or female slave should be given in qisas for an abortion case of a woman from the tribe of Bani Lihyan as blood money for the fetus, but the lady on whom the penalty had been imposed died. So the prophets ordered that her property be inherited by her offspring and her husband, and that the penalty be paid by her asaba. Volume 8, Book 80, number 733, narrated by Al-Aswad Mu'ad bin Jabal, gave this verdict for us in the lifetime of Allah's Apostle. 1/2 of the inheritance is to be given to the daughter and the other half to the sister. Sulaiman said, Mu'ad gave a verdict for us, but he did not mention that it was so in the lifetime of Allah's Apostle. Volume 8, Book 80, number 734, narrated by Huzail. Abdullah said, the judgment I will give in this matter will be like the judgment of the Prophet. That is, 1/2 is for the daughter and 1/6 for the son's daughter, and the rest of the inheritance for the sister. Volume 8, Book 80, number 735, narrated by Jabir. While I was sick, the Prophet entered upon me and asked for some water to perform ablution, and after he had finished his ablution, he sprinkled some water of his ablution over me, whereupon I became conscious and said, O Allah's Apostle, I have sisters. Then the divine verses regarding the laws of inheritance were revealed. Volume 8, Book 80, number 736, narrated by Al-Bara. The last Quranic verse that was revealed to the Prophet was the final verse of Surat An-Nisa. That is, they ask you for a legal verdict, say Allah directs thus, about those who leave no descendants or ascendants as heirs. 4.176. Volume 8, Book 80, number 737, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's Apostle said, I am more closer to the believers than their own selves, so whoever among them dies leaving some inheritance, his inheritance will be given to his asaba, and whoever dies leaving a debt or dependents or destitute children, then I am their supporter. Volume 8, Book 80, number 738, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, Give the fara'id, the shares of the inheritance that are prescribed in the Quran, to those who are entitled to receive it, and whatever is left should be given to the closest male relative of the deceased. Volume 8, Book 80, number 739, narrated by Ibn Abbas, regarding the holy verse, and to everyone we have appointed heirs. When the emigrants came to Medina, the Ansar used to be the heir of the emigrants, and vice versa, instead of their own kindred by blood, Dal Laram, and that was because of the bond of brotherhood which the Prophet had established between them, that is the Ansar and the emigrants. But when the divine verse, and to everyone we have appointed heirs, 4.33 was revealed, it cancelled the other order, that is, to those also to whom your right hands have pledged. Volume 8, Book 80, number 740, narrated by Ibn Umar. A man and his wife had a case of li'an, or mula'ana, during the lifetime of the Prophet, and the man denied the paternity of her child. The Prophet gave his verdict for their separation, divorce, and then the child was regarded as belonging to the wife only. Volume 8, Book 80, number 741, narrated by Aisha Utbah bin Abi Waqqas, said to his brother Saad, The son of the slave girl of Zama is my son, so be his custodian. So when it was the year of the conquest of Mecca, Saad took that child and said, He is my nephew, and my brother told me to be his custodian. On that, Abu bin Zama got up and said, But the child is my brother and the son of my father's slave girl, as he was born on his bed. So they both went to the Prophet. Saad said, O Allah's Apostle, this is the son of my brother, and he told me to be his custodian. Then Abu bin Zama said, But he is my brother and the son of the slave girl of my father, born on his bed. The Prophet said, This child is for you, O Abu bin Zama, as the child is for the owner of the bed, and the adulterer receives the stones. He then ordered his wife, Sauda bint Zama, to cover herself before that boy, as he noticed the boy's resemblance to Utbah. Since then the boy had never seen Sauda till he died. Volume 8, Book 80, number 742, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, The boy is for the owner of the bed. Volume 8, Book 80, number 743, narrated by Aisha. I bought Barira, a female slave. The Prophet said to me, Buy her as the wala is for the manumitted. Once she was given a sheep in charity. The Prophet said, it, the sheep, is a charitable gift for her, Barira, and a gift for us. Al-Hakam said, Barira's husband was a free man. Ibn Abbas said, when I saw him, he was a slave. Volume 8, Book 80, number 744. Narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet said, the wala is for the manumitted of the slave. Volume 8, Book 80, number 745. Narrated by Abdullah. The Muslims did not free slaves as sa'iba, but the people of the pre-Islamic period of ignorance used to do so. Volume 8, Book 80, number 746. Narrated by Al-Aswad. Aisha bought Barira in order to manumit her, but her masters stipulated that her wala, after her death, would be for them. Aisha said, O Allah's Apostle, I have bought Barira in order to manumit her, but her master stipulated that her wala will be for them. The Prophet said, manumit her as the wala is for the one who manumits, the slave, or said, the one who pays her price. Then, Aisha bought and manumitted her. After that, Barira was given the choice by the Prophet to stay with her husband or leave him. She said, if he gave me so much and so much money, I would not stay with him. Al-Aswad added, her husband was a free man. The sub-narrator added, the series of the narrators of Al-Aswad's statement is incomplete. The statement of Ibn Abbas, that is, when I saw him he was a slave, is more authentic. Volume 8, Book 80, number 747. Narrated by Ali. We have no book to recite except the Book of Allah, Quran, and this paper. Then, Ali took out the paper, and behold, there was written in it, legal verdicts about the retaliation for wounds, the ages of the camels, to be paid as zakat or as blood money. In it was also written, Medina is a sanctuary from Air Mountain to Tar Mountain. So whoever innovates in it an heresy, something new in religion, or commits a crime in it, or gives shelter to such an innovator, will incur the curse of Allah, the angels and all the people, and none of his compulsory or optional good deeds will be accepted on the day of resurrection. And whoever, a freed slave, takes as his master, that is, befriends, some people other than high real masters without the permission of his real masters, will incur the curse of Allah, the angels and all the people, and none of his compulsory or optional good deeds will be accepted on the day of resurrection. And the asylum granted by any Muslim is to be secured by all the Muslims, even if it is granted by one of the lowest social status among them. And whoever betrays a Muslim in this respect will incur the curse of Allah, the angels, and all the people, and none of his compulsory or optional good deeds will be accepted on the day of resurrection. Volume 8, Book 80, number 748. Narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet forbade the selling of the wala, of slaves, or giving it as a present. Volume 8, Book 80, number 749. Narrated by Ibn Umar. That Aisha, the mother of the believers, intended to buy a slave girl in order to manumit her. The slave girl's master said, we are ready to sell her to you on the condition that her wala should be for us. Aisha mentioned that to Allah's Apostle, who said, this condition should not prevent you from buying her, for the wala is for the one who manumits, the slave. Volume 8, Book 80, number 750. Narrated by Al-Aswad. Aisha said, I bought Barira and her masters stipulated that the wala would be for them. Aisha mentioned that to the Prophet and he said, manumit her, as the wala is for the one who gives the silver, that is, pays the price for freeing the slave. Aisha added, so I manumitted her. After that, the Prophet called her, Barira, and gave her the choice to go back to her husband or not. She said, if he gave me so much and so much money, I would not stay with him. So she selected her own self, that is, refused to go back to her husband. Volume 8, Book 80, number 751, narrated by Ibn Umar. When Aisha intended to buy Barira, she said to the Prophet, Barira's master stipulated that they will have the wala. The Prophet said to Aisha, buy her, as the wala is for the one who manumits. Volume 8, Book 80, number 752. Narrated by Aisha. Allah's Apostle said, the wala is for the one who gives the silver, pays the price, and does the favor of manumission after paying the price. Volume 8, Book 80, number 753, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, the freed slave belongs to the people who have freed him, or said something similar. Volume 8, Book 80, number 754, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet said, the son of the sister of some people is from them or from their own selves. Volume 8, Book 80, number 755, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "If somebody dies among the Muslims, leaving some property, the property will go to his heirs, and if he leaves a debt or dependents, we will take care of them." Volume 8, Book 80, number 756, narrated by Usama bin Zaid. The Prophet said, "A Muslim cannot be the heir of a disbeliever, nor can a disbeliever be the heir of a Muslim." Volume 8, Book 80, number 757. Narrated by Aisha. Sa'd bin Abi Waqqas and Abu bin Zama had a dispute over a boy. Sa'd said, "O Allah's Apostle, this boy is the son of my brother, Utbah bin Abi Waqqas, who told me to be his custodian as he was his son. Please notice to whom he bears affinity." And Abu bin Zama said, "This is my brother, O Allah's Apostle. He was born on my father's bed by his slave girl." Then the Prophet looked at the boy and noticed evident resemblance between him and Utbah. So he said, "He, the toy, is for you, O Abu bin Zama, for the boy is for the owner of the bed, and the stone is for the adulterer. Screen yourself before the boy, O Sauda bint Zama." Aisha added, since then he had never seen Sauda. Volume 8, Book 80, number 758, narrated by Sa'd. I heard the Prophet saying, "Whoever claims to be the son of a person other than his father, and he knows that person is not his father, then paradise will be forbidden for him." I mentioned that to Abu Bakr, and he said, "My ears heard that and my heart memorized it from Allah's Apostle." Volume 8, Book 80, number 759, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "Do not deny your fathers, that is claimed to be the sons of persons other than your fathers, and whoever denies his father is charged with disbelief." Volume 8, Book 80, number 760, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's Apostle said, "There were two women with whom there were their two sons. A wolf came and took away the son of one of them. That lady said to her companion, 'The wolf has taken your son.' The other said, 'But it has taken your son.' So both of them sought the judgment of the prophet, David, who judged that the boy should be given to the older lady. Then both of them went to the prophet Solomon, son of David, and informed him of the case. Solomon said, 'Give me a knife so that I may cut the child into 2 portions and give 1/2 to each of you.' The younger lady said, 'Do not do so. May Allah bless you. He is her child.' On that, he gave the child to the younger lady. Abu Huraira added, 'By Allah, I had never heard the word sakin as meaning knife, except on that day, for we used to call it mudya." Volume 8, Book 80, number 761, narrated by Aisha. Allah's Apostle once entered upon me in a very happy mood, with his features glittering with joy, and said, "O Aisha, won't you see that Mujaziz, a Ka'if, looked just now at Zaid bin Haritha and Usama bin Zaid, and said, 'These feet, of Usama and his father, belong to each other.' See Hadith number 755, Volume 4. Volume 8, Book 80, number 762, narrated by Aisha. Once Allah's Apostle entered upon me, and he was in a very happy mood and said, 'O Aisha, don't you know that Mujaziz al-Mudliji entered and saw Usama and Zaid with a velvet covering on them, and their heads were covered while their feet were uncovered? He said, 'These feet belong to each other.'" Volume 8, Book 81, number 763, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's Apostle said, "When an adulterer commits illegal sexual intercourse, then he is not a believer at the time he is doing it. And when somebody drinks an alcoholic drink, then he is not a believer at the time of drinking. And when a thief steals, he is not a believer at the time when he is stealing. And when a robber robs and the people look at him, then he is not a believer at the time of doing it." Abu Huraira, in another narration, narrated the same from the Prophet with the exclusion of robbery. Volume 8, Book 81, number 764, narrated by Anas bin Malik. The Prophet beat a drunk with palm leaf stalks and shoes, and Abu Bakr gave such a sinner 40 lashes. Volume 8, Book 81, number 765, narrated by Uqba bin al-Harith. An-Numan, or the son of An-Numan, was brought to the Prophet on a charge of drunkenness. So the Prophet ordered all the men present in the house to beat him. So all of them beat him, and I was also one of them who beat him with shoes. Volume 8, Book 81, number 766, narrated by Uqba bin al-Harith. An-Numan, or the son of An-Numan, was brought to the Prophet in a state of intoxication. The Prophet felt it hard, was angry, and ordered all those who were present in the house to beat him, and they beat him, using palm leaf stalks and shoes, and I was among those who beat him. Volume 8, Book 81, number 767, narrated by Anas. The Prophet lashed a drunk with date leaf stalks and shoes, and Abu Bakr gave a drunk 40 lashes. Volume 8, Book 81, number 768, narrated by Abu Salama Abu Huraira said, a man who drank wine was brought to the Prophet. The Prophet said, beat him. Abu Huraira added, so some of us beat him with our hands, and some with their shoes, and some with their garments by twisting it, like a lash. And then when we finished, someone said to him, may Allah disgrace you. On that the Prophet said, do not say so, for you are helping Satan to overpower him. Volume 8, Book 81, number 769, narrated by Ali bin Abi Talib. I would not feel sorry for one who dies because of receiving a legal punishment, except the drunk, for if he should die when being punished, I would give blood money to his family, because no fixed punishment has been ordered by Allah's apostle for the drunk. Volume 8, Book 81, number 770, narrated by Asib bin Yazid. We used to strike the drunks with our hands, shoes, clothes, by twisting it into the shape of lashes, during the lifetime of the Prophet Abu Bakr and the early part of Umar's caliphate. But during the last period of Umar's caliphate, he used to give the drunk 40 lashes, and when drunks became mischievous and disobedient, he used to scourge them 80 lashes. Volume 8, Book 81, number 771, narrated by Umar bin al-Khattab. During the lifetime of the Prophet, there was a man called Abdullah, whose nickname was Donkey, and he used to make Allah's apostle laugh. The Prophet lashed him because of drinking alcohol, and one day he was brought to the Prophet on the same charge and was lashed. On that, a man among the people said, O Allah, curse him, how frequently he has been brought to the Prophet on such a charge. The Prophet said, do not curse him, for by Allah, I know, for he loves Allah and his apostle. Volume 8, Book 81, number 772, narrated by Abu Huraira. A drunk was brought to the Prophet and he ordered him to be beaten, lashed. Some of us beat him with our hands, and some with their shoes, and some with their garments, twisted in the form of a lash. When that drunk had left, a man said, what is wrong with him? May Allah disgrace him. Allah's apostle said, do not help Satan against your Muslim brother. Volume 8, Book 81, number 773, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet said, when a person, an adulterer, commits illegal sexual intercourse, then he is not a believer at the time he is doing it. And when somebody steals, then he is not a believer at the time he is stealing. Volume 8, Book 81, number 774, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Allah curses a man who steals an egg and gets his hand cut off, or steals a rope and gets his hands cut off. Alamash said, people used to interpret the baida as an iron helmet, and they used to think that the rope may cost a few dirhams. Volume 8, Book 81, number 775. Narrated by Ubadah bin As-Samit. We were with the Prophet in a gathering, and he said, swear allegiance to me that you will not worship anything besides Allah, will not steal, and will not commit illegal sexual intercourse. And then, the Prophet recited the whole verse, that is 60:12. The Prophet added, and whoever among you fulfills his pledge, his reward is with Allah, and whoever commits something of such sins, and receives the legal punishment for it, that will be considered as the expiation for that sin. And whoever commits something of such sins and Allah screens him, it is up to Allah whether to excuse or punish him. Volume 8, Book 81, number 776, narrated by Abdullah Allah. Apostle said in Hajjat al-Wada, which month of the year do you think is most sacred? The people said, this current month of ours, the month of Dhul Hijjah. He said, which town, country do you think is the most sacred? They said, this city of ours, Mecca. He said, which day do you think is the most sacred? The people said, this day of ours. He then said, Allah, the Blessed, the Supreme, has made your blood, your property, and your honor as sacred as this day of yours in this town of yours, in this month of yours, and such protection cannot be slighted, except rightfully. He then said thrice, have I conveyed Allah's message to you? The people answered him each time saying yes. The Prophet added, may Allah be merciful to you, or woe on you. Do not revert to disbelief after me by cutting the necks of each other. Volume 8, Book 81, number 777, narrated by Aisha. Whenever the Prophet was given an option between two things, he used to select the easier of the two, as long as it was not sinful. But if it was sinful, he would remain far from it. By Allah, He never took revenge for himself concerning any matter that was presented to him, but when Allah's limits were transgressed, he would take revenge for Allah's sake. Volume 8, Book 81, number 778. Narrated by Aisha. Osama approached the Prophet on behalf of a woman who had committed theft. The Prophet said, "The people before you were destroyed because they used to inflict the legal punishments on the poor and forgive the rich. By him in whose hand my soul is. If Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet, did that is stole, I would cut off her hand." Volume 8, Book 81, number 779. Narrated by Aisha the Quraysh. People became very worried about the Makhzumiyah lady who had committed theft. They said, "Nobody can speak in favor of the lady to Allah's apostle, and nobody dares do that except Usama, who is the favorite of Allah's apostle." When Usama spoke to Allah's apostle about that matter, Allah's apostle said, "Do you intercede with me to violate one of the legal punishment of Allah?" Then he got up and addressed the people, saying, "O people, the nations before you went astray because if a noble person committed theft, they used to leave him. But if a weak person among them committed theft, they used to inflict the legal punishment on him. By Allah, if Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad, committed theft, Muhammad will cut off her hand." Volume 8, Book 81, number 780, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet said, "The hand should be cut off for stealing something that is worth a quarter of a dinar or more." Volume 8, Book 81, number 781, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet said, "The hand of a thief should be cut off for stealing a quarter of a dinar." Volume 8, Book 81, number 782, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet said, "The hand should be cut off for stealing a quarter of a dinar." Volume 8, Book 81, number 783, narrated by Aisha. The hand of a thief was not cut off during the lifetime of the Prophet, except for stealing something equal to a shield in value. Volume 8, Book 81, number 784, narrated by Aisha as above, 783. Volume 8, Book 81, number 785, narrated by Aisha. A thief's hand was not cut off for stealing something cheaper than a hajafa or a turs, two kinds of shields, each of which was worth a respectable price. Volume 8, Book 81, number 786, narrated by Aisha. A thief's hand was not cut off for stealing something worth less than the price of a shield, whether a turs or hajafa, two kinds of shields, each of which was worth a respectable price. Volume 8, Book 81, number 787, narrated by Ibn Umar. Allah's apostle cut off the hand of a thief for stealing a shield that was worth 3 dirhams. Volume 8, Book 81, number 788, narrated by Ibn Umar. The Prophet cut off the hand of a thief for stealing a shield that was worth 3 dirhams. Volume 8, Book 81, number 789, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. The Prophet cut off the hand of a thief for stealing a shield that was worth 3 dirhams. Volume 8, Book 81, number 790, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. The Prophet cut off the hand of a thief for stealing a shield that was worth 3 dirhams. Volume 8, Book 81, number 791, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle said, "Allah curses the thief who steals an egg or a helmet, for which his hand is to be cut off, or steals a rope, for which his hand is to be cut off." Volume 8, Book 81, number 792, narrated by Aisha. The Prophet cut off the hand of a lady, and that lady used to come to me, and I used to convey her message to the Prophet, and she repented, and her repentance was sincere. Volume 8, Book 81, number 793, narrated by Ubadah bin Asamit. I gave the pledge of allegiance to the Prophet with a group of people, and he said, "I take your pledge that you will not worship anything besides Allah, will not steal, will not commit infanticide, will not slander others by forging false statements and spreading it, and will not disobey me in anything good. And whoever among you fulfill all these obligations of the pledge, his reward is with Allah. And whoever commits any of the above crimes and receives his legal punishment in this world, that will be his expiation and purification. But if Allah screens his sin, it will be up to Allah, who will either punish or forgive him according to his wish." Abu Abdullah said, "If a thief repents after his hand has been cut off, his witness will be accepted. Similarly, if any person upon whom any legal punishment has been inflicted repents, his witness will be accepted." Disbelievers, Volume 8, Book 82, number 794, narrated by Anas. Some people from the tribe of Yukul came to the Prophet and embraced Islam. The climate of Medina did not suit them, so the Prophet ordered them to go to the herd of milch, camels of charity, and to drink their milk and urine as a medicine. They did so, and after they had recovered from their ailment, became healthy, they turned renegades, reverted from Islam, and killed the shepherd of the camels and took the camels away. The Prophet sent some people in their pursuit, and so they were caught and brought, and the Prophets ordered that their hands and legs should be cut off, and that their eyes should be branded with heated pieces of iron, and that their cut hands and legs should not be cauterized till they die. Volume 8, Book 82, number 795, narrated by Anas. The Prophet cut off the hands and feet of the men belonging to the tribe of Urana, and did not cauterize their bleeding limbs till they died. Volume 8, Book 82, number 796, narrated by Anas. A group of people from Ukail tribe came to the Prophet, and they were living with the people of As-Sufa, but they became ill as the climate of Medina did not suit them. So they said, "O Allah's apostle, provide us with milk." The Prophet said, "I see no other way for you than to use the camels of Allah's apostle." So they went and drank the milk and urine of the camels as medicine, and became healthy and fat. Then they killed the shepherd and took the camels away. When a help-seeker came to Allah's apostle, he sent some men in their pursuit, and they were captured and brought before midday. The Prophet ordered for some iron pieces to be made red hot, and their eyes were branded with them, and their hands and feet were cut off and were not cauterized. Then they were put at a place called Al-Hara, and when they asked for water to drink, they were not given till they died. Abu Kilaba said, "Those people committed theft and murder and fought against Allah and His Apostle." Volume 8, Book 82, number 797. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. A group of people from Ukail or Urana tribe, but I think he said that they were from Ukail, came to Medina, and they became ill. So the Prophet ordered them to go to the herd of milch, she-camels, and told them to go out and drink the camel's urine and milk as a medicine. So they went and drank it, and when they became healthy, they killed the shepherd and drove away the camels. This news reached the Prophet early in the morning, so he sent some men in their pursuit, and they were captured and brought to the Prophet before midday. He ordered to cut off their hands and legs and their eyes to be branded with heated iron pieces, and they were thrown at Al-Hara, and when they asked for water to drink, they were not given water. Abu Kilaba said, "Those were the people who committed theft and murder and reverted to disbelief after being believers, Muslims, and fought against Allah and His Apostle." Volume 8, Book 82, number 798, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, 7 people will be shaded by Allah by His shade on the day of resurrection, when there will be no shade except His shade. They will be a just ruler, a young man who has been brought up in the worship of Allah, a man who remembers Allah in seclusion, and his eyes are then flooded with tears, a man whose heart is attached to mosques, offers his compulsory congregational prayers in the mosque, 2 men who love each other for Allah's sake, a man who is called by a charming lady of noble birth to commit illegal sexual intercourse with her, and he says, "I am afraid of Allah," and finally, a man who gives in charity so secretly that his left hand does not know what his right hand has given. Volume 8, Book 82, number 799, narrated by Sahl bin Sa'd. The Prophet said, "Whoever guarantees me the chastity of what is between his legs, that is his private parts, and what is between his jaws, that is his tongue, I guarantee him paradise." Volume 8, Book 82, number 800, narrated by Anas. I will narrate to you a narration which nobody will narrate to you after me. I heard that form the Prophet. I heard the Prophet saying, "The hour still not be established," or said, "From among the portents of the hour is that the religious knowledge will be taken away by the death of religious scholars, and general ignorance of religion will appear, and the drinking of alcoholic drinks will be very common, and open illegal sexual intercourse will prevail, and men will decrease in number while women will increase so much so that, for 50 women, there will only be 1 man to look after them." Volume 8, Book 82, number 800, narrated by Ikrimah from Ibn Abbas. Allah's apostles said, "When a slave of Allah commits illegal sexual intercourse, he is not a believer at the time of committing it, and if he steals, he is not a believer at the time of stealing, and if he drinks an alcoholic drink, when he is not a believer at the time of drinking it, and he is not a believer when he commits a murder." Ikrimah said, I asked Ibn Abbas, "How is faith taken away from him?" He said, like this, by clasping his hands and then separating them, and added, "But if he repents, faith returns to him like this." by clasping his hands again. Volume 8, Book 82, number 801, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "The one who commits an illegal sexual intercourse is not a believer at the time of committing illegal sexual intercourse, and a thief is not a believer at the time of committing theft, and a drinker of alcoholic drink is not a believer at the time of drinking. Yet, the gate of repentance is open thereafter." Volume 8, Book 82, number 802, narrated by Abdullah bin Masud. I said, "O Allah's Apostle, which is the biggest sin?" He said, "To set up rivals to Allah by worshipping others, though He alone has created you." I asked, "What is next?" He said, "To kill your child, lest it should share your food." I asked, "What is next?" He said, "To commit illegal sexual intercourse with the wife of your neighbor." Volume 8, Book 82, number 803, narrated by Ash-Shabi. From Ali when the latter stoned a lady to death on a Friday. Ali said, "I have stoned her according to the tradition of Allah's Apostle." Volume 8, Book 82, number 804, narrated by Ash-Shaibani. I asked Abdullah bin Abi Awfa, "Did Allah's Apostle carry out the rajam penalty, that is, stoning to death?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Before the revelation of Surat Ar-Nur or after it?" He replied, "I don't know." Volume 8, Book 82, number 805, narrated by Jabir bin Abdullah al-Ansari. A man from the tribe of Bani Aslam came to Allah's Apostle and informed him that he had committed illegal sexual intercourse and bore witness 4 times against himself. Allah's Apostle ordered him to be stoned to death as he was a married person. Volume 8, Book 82, number 806, narrated by Abu Huraira. A man came to Allah's Apostle while he was in the mosque, and he called him saying, "O Allah's Apostle, I have committed illegal sexual intercourse." The Prophet turned his face to the other side, but that man repeated his statement 4 times, and after he bore witness against himself 4 times, the Prophet called him, saying, "Are you mad?" The man said, "No." The Prophet said, "Are you married?" The man said, "Yes." Then the Prophet said, "Take him away and stone him to death." Jabir bin Abdullah said, "I was among the ones who participated in stoning him, and we stoned him at the Musalla. When the stones troubled him, he fled, but we overtook him at Al-Hara and stoned him to death." Volume 8, Book 82, number 807, narrated by Aisha Sad bin Abi Waqas and Abd bin Zama quarreled with each other regarding a child. The Prophet said, "The boy is for you, O Abd bin Zama, for the boy is for the owner of the bed. O Sauda, screen yourself from the boy." The sub-narrator, Al-Layth, added that the Prophet also said, "And the stone is for the person who commits an illegal sexual intercourse." Volume 8, Book 82, number 808, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "The boy is for the owner of the bed, and the stone is for the person who commits illegal sexual intercourse." Volume 8, Book 82, number 809, narrated by Ibn Umar. A Jew and a Jewess were brought to Allah's Apostle on a charge of committing an illegal sexual intercourse. The Prophet asked them, "What is the legal punishment for this sin in your book, Torah?" They replied, "Our priests have innovated the punishment of blackening the faces with charcoal and tajbiyah." Abdullah bin Salam said, "O Allah's Apostle, tell them to bring the Torah." The Torah was brought, and then one of the Jews put his hand over the divine verse of the Rajam, stoning to death, and started reading what preceded and what followed it. On that, Ibn Salam said to the Jew, "Lift up your hand. Behold." The divine verse of the Rajam was under his hand. So Allah's Apostle ordered that the 2 sinners be stoned to death, and so they were stoned. Ibn Umar added, "So both of them were stoned at the Balat, and I saw the Jew sheltering the Jewess." Volume 8, Book 82, number 810, narrated by Jabir. A man from the tribe of Aslam came to the Prophet and confessed that he had committed an illegal sexual intercourse. The Prophet turned his face away from him till the man bore witness against himself 4 times. The Prophet said to him, "Are you mad?" He said, "No." He said, "Are you married?" He said, "Yes." Then the Prophet ordered that he be stoned to death, and he was stoned to death at the Musalla. When the stones troubled him, he fled, but he was caught and was stoned till he died. The Prophet spoke well of him and offered his funeral prayer. Volume 8, Book 82, number 811, narrated by Abu Huraira. A person had sexual relation with his wife in the month of Ramadan while he was fasting, and he came to Allah's Apostle seeking his verdict concerning that action. The Prophet said to him, "Can you afford to manumit a slave?" The man said, "No." The Prophet said, "Can you fast for 2 successive months?" He said, "No." The Prophet said, "Then feed 60 poor persons." Volume 8, Book 82, number 811. Narrated by Aisha. A man came to the Prophet in the mosque and said, "I am burnt, ruined." The Prophet asked him, "With what? What have you done?" He said, "I have had sexual relation with my wife in the month of Ramadan, while fasting." The Prophet said to him, "Give in charity." He said, "I have nothing." The man sat down, and in the meantime there came a person driving a donkey carrying food to the Prophet. The sub-narrator, Abdul Rahman, added, "I do not know what kind of food it was." On that, the Prophet said, "Where is the burnt person?" The man said, "Here I am." The Prophet said to him, "Take this food and give it in charity to someone." The man said, "To a poorer person than El? My family has nothing to eat." Then the Prophet said to him, "Then eat it yourselves." Volume 8, Book 82, number 812. Narrated by Anas bin Malik. While I was with the Prophet, a man came and said, "O Allah's Apostle, I have committed a legally punishable sin. Please inflict the legal punishment on me." The Prophet did not ask him what he had done. Then the time for the prayer became due, and the man offered prayer along with the Prophet. And when the Prophet had finished his prayer, the man again got up and said, "O Allah's Apostle, I have committed a legally punishable sin. Please inflict the punishment on me according to Allah's laws." The Prophet said, "Haven't you prayed with us?" He said, "Yes." The Prophet said, "Allah has forgiven your sin," or said, "Your legally punishable sin." Volume 8, Book 82, number 813. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. When Ma'iz bin Malik came to the Prophet, in order to confess, the Prophet said to him, "Probably you have only kissed the lady, or winked, or looked at her." He said, "No, O Allah's Apostle." The Prophet said, using no euphemism, "Did you have sexual intercourse with her?" The narrator added, "At that is after his confession, the Prophet ordered that he be stoned to death." Volume 8, Book 82, number 814. Narrated by Abu Huraira. A man from among the people came to Allah's Apostle while Allah's Apostle was sitting in the mosque and addressed him, saying, "O Allah's Apostle, I have committed an illegal sexual intercourse." The Prophet turned his face away from him. The man came to that side to which the Prophet had turned his face and said, "O Allah's Apostle, I have committed an illegal intercourse." The Prophet turned his face to the other side, and the man came to that side, and when he confessed 4 times, the Prophet called him and said, "Are you mad?" He said, "No, O Allah's Apostle." The Prophet said, "Are you married?" He said, "Yes, O Allah's Apostle." The Prophet said to the people, "Take him away and stone him to death." Ibn Shihab added, "I was told by one who heard Jabir, that Jabir said, I was among those who stoned the man, and we stoned him at the Musalla, Id praying place. And when the stones troubled him, he jumped quickly and ran away, but we overtook him at Al-Hara and stoned him to death there." Volume 8, Book 82, number 815. Narrated by Abu Huraira and Zaid bin Khalid. While we were with the Prophet, a man stood up and said to the Prophet, "I beseech you by Allah that you should judge us according to Allah's laws." Then the man's opponent, who was wiser than him, got up saying to Allah's Apostle, "Judge us according to Allah's law and kindly allow me to speak." The Prophet said, "Speak." He said, "My son was a laborer working for this man, and he committed an illegal sexual intercourse with his wife, and I gave 100 sheep and a slave as a ransom for my son's sin. Then I asked a learned man about this case, and he informed me that my son should receive 100 lashes and be exiled for 1 year, and the man's wife should be stoned to death." The Prophet said, "By him in whose hand my soul is, I will judge you according to the laws of Allah. Your 100 sheep and the slave are to be returned to you, and your son has to receive 100 lashes and be exiled for 1 year. O Unais, go to the wife of this man, and if she confesses, then stone her to death." Unais went to her and she confessed. He then stoned her to death. Volume 8, Book 82, number 816. Narrated by Ibn Abbas. Umar said, "I am afraid that after a long time has passed, people may say, 'We do not find the verses of the Rajam, stoning to death, in the Holy Book,' and consequently they may go astray by leaving an obligation that Allah has revealed. Lo, I confirm that the penalty of rajam be inflicted on him who commits illegal sexual intercourse, if he is already married, and the crime is proved by witnesses or pregnancy or confession. Sufyan added, I have memorized this narration in this way. Umar added, surely Allah's apostle carried out the penalty of rajam, and so did we after him. Volume 8, Book 82, number 817, narrated by Ibn Abbas. I used to teach the Quran to some people of the Muhajirun, emigrants, among whom there was Abdur Rahman bin Auf. While I was in his house at Mina, and he was with Umar bin al-Khattab during Umar's last Hajj, Abdur Rahman came to me and said, would that you had seen the man who came today to the chief of the believers. Umar, saying, O chief of the believers, what do you think about so-and-so who says, if Umar should die, I will give the pledge of allegiance to such and such person, as by Allah, the pledge of allegiance to Abu Bakr was nothing but a prompt, sudden action, which got established afterwards. Umar became angry and then said, Allah willing, I will stand before the people tonight, and warn them against those people who want to deprive the others of their rights, the question of rulership. Abdurrahman said, I said, O chief of the believers, do not do that, for the season of Hajj gathers the riffraff and the rubble, and it will be they who will gather around you when you stand to address the people. And I am afraid that you will get up and say something, and some people will spread your statement, and may not say what you have actually said, and may not understand its meaning, and may interpret it incorrectly. So you should wait till you reach Medina, as it is the place of emigration and the place of Prophet's traditions, and there you can come in touch with the learned and noble people, and tell them your ideas with confidence, and the learned people will understand your statement and put it in its proper place. On that, Umar said, by Allah, Allah willing, I will do this in the first speech I will deliver before the people in Medina. Ibn Abbas added, we reached Medina by the end of the month of Dhul Hijjah, and when it was Friday we went quickly to the mosque as soon as the sun had declined, and I saw Sa'id bin Zaid bin Amr bin Nufail sitting at the corner of the pulpit, and I too sat close to him so that my knee was touching his knee, and after a short while, Umar bin al-Khattab came out, and when I saw him coming towards us, I said to Sa'id bin Zaid bin Amr bin Nufail, today Umar will say such a thing as he has never said since he was chosen as Caliph. Said denied my statement with astonishment and said, what thing do you expect Umar to say the like of which he has never said before? In the meantime, Umar sat on the pulpit, and when the call makers for the prayer had finished their call, Umar stood up, and having glorified and praised Allah as he deserved, he said, now then, I am going to tell you something which Allah has written for me to say. I do not know. Perhaps it portends my death. So whoever understands and remembers it must narrate it to the others wherever his mount takes him. But if somebody is afraid that he does not understand it, then it is unlawful for him to tell lies about me. Allah sent Muhammad with the truth and revealed the holy book to him, and among what Allah revealed was the verse of the rajam, the stoning of married person, male and female, who commits illegal sexual intercourse. And we did recite this verse and understood and memorized it. Allah's apostle did carry out the punishment of stoning, and so did we after him. I am afraid that after a long time has passed, somebody will say, by Allah, we do not find the verse of the rajam in Allah's book. And thus they will go astray by leaving an obligation which Allah has revealed. And the punishment of the rajam is to be inflicted to any married person, male and female, who commits illegal sexual intercourse, if the required evidence is available, or there is conception or confession. And then we used to recite among the verses in Allah's book, O people, do not claim to be the offspring of other than your fathers, as it is disbelief, unthankfulness on your part, that you claim to be the offspring of other than your real father. Then Allah's apostle said, do not praise me excessively as Jesus, son of Mary, was praised, but call me Allah's slave and his apostles. O people, I have been informed that a speaker amongst you says, by Allah, if Umar should die, I will give the pledge of allegiance to such and such person. One should not deceive oneself by saying that the pledge of allegiance given to Abu Bakr was given suddenly, and it was successful. No doubt it was like that, but Allah saved the people from its evil, and there is none among you who has the qualities of Abu Bakr. Remember that whoever gives the pledge of allegiance to anybody among you, without consulting the other Muslims, neither that person nor the person to whom the pledge of allegiance was given, are to be supported, lest they both should be killed. And no doubt after the death of the Prophet, we were informed that the Ansar disagreed with us, and gathered in the shed of Bani Sada. Ali and Zubair and whoever was with them opposed us, while the emigrants gathered with Abu Bakr. I said to Abu Bakr, let's go to these Ansari brothers of ours. So we set out seeking them, and when we approached them, 2 pious men of theirs met us and informed us of the final decision of the Ansar and said, "O group of Muhajirin, emigrants, where are you going?" We replied, "We are going to these Ansari brothers of ours." They said to us, "You shouldn't go near them. Carry out whatever we have already decided." I said, "By Allah, we will go to them." And so we proceeded until we reached them at the shed of Bani Sada. Behold, there was a man sitting amongst them and wrapped in something. I asked, "Who is that man?" They said, "He is Sa'd bin Ubadah." I asked, "What is wrong with him?" They said, "He is sick." After we sat for a while, the Ansar speaker said, "None has the right to be worshipped but Allah." And praising Allah as he deserved, he added, "To proceed, we are Allah's Ansar, helpers, and the majority of the Muslim army, while you, the emigrants, are a small group, and some people among you came with the intention of preventing us from practicing this matter, of caliphate, and depriving us of it." When the speaker had finished, I intended to speak as I had prepared a speech which I liked, and which I wanted to deliver in the presence of Abu Bakr, and I used to avoid provoking him. So when I wanted to speak, Abu Bakr said, "Wait a while." I disliked to make him angry. So Abu Bakr himself gave a speech, and he was wiser and more patient than I. By Allah, he never missed a sentence that I liked in my own prepared speech, but he said the like of it or better than it spontaneously. After a pause, he said, "O Ansar, you deserve all the qualities that you have attributed to yourselves, but this question of caliphate is only for the Quraysh, as they are the best of the Arabs as regards descent and home, and I am pleased to suggest that you choose either of these 2 men, so take the oath of allegiance to either of them as you wish." And then Abu Bakr held my hand, and Abu Ubadah bin Abdullah's hand, who was sitting amongst us. I hated nothing of what he had said except that proposal. For by Allah, I would rather have my neck chopped off as expiator for a sin than become the ruler of a nation, one of whose members is Abu Bakr, unless at the time of my death my own self suggests something I don't feel at present. And then one of the Ansar said, "I am the pillar on which the camel with a skin disease, eczema, rubs itself to satisfy the itching, that is, I am a noble, and I am as a high-class palm tree. O Quraysh, there should be one ruler from us and one from you." Then there was a hue and cry among the gathering, and their voices rose so that I was afraid there might be great disagreement. So I said, "O Abu Bakr, hold your hand out." He held his hand out, and I pledged allegiance to him. And then all the emigrants gave the pledge of allegiance, and so did the Ansar afterwards. And so we became victorious over Sa'd bin Ubadah, whom Al-Ansar wanted to make a ruler. One of the Ansar said, "You have killed Sa'd bin Ubadah." I replied, "Allah has killed Sa'd bin Ubadah." Umar added, "By Allah, apart from the great tragedy that had happened to us, that is, the death of the Prophet, there was no greater problem than the allegiance pledged to Abu Bakr, because we were afraid that if we left the people, they might give the pledge of allegiance after us to one of their men, in which case we would have given them our consent for something against our real wish, or would have opposed them and caused great trouble. So if any person gives the pledge of allegiance to somebody, to become a caliph, without consulting the other Muslims, then the one he has selected should not be granted allegiance, lest both of them should be killed." Volume 8, Book 82, number 818, narrated by Zayd bin Khalid al-Jihani. I heard the Prophet ordering that an unmarried person guilty of illegal sexual intercourse be flogged 100 stripes and be exiled for 1 year. Umar bin al-Khattab also exiled such a person, and this tradition is still valid. Volume 8, Book 82, number 819, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle judged that the unmarried person who was guilty of illegal sexual intercourse be exiled for 1 year and receive the legal punishment, that is, be flogged with 100 stripes. Volume 8, Book 82, number 820, narrated by Ibn Abbas. The Prophet cursed the effeminate men and those women who assume the similitude, manners of men. He also said, "Turn them out of your houses." He turned such and such person out, and Umar also turned out such and such person. Volume 8, Book 82, number 821, narrated by Abu Huraira and Zayd bin Khalid. A Bedouin came to the Prophet while he, the Prophet, was sitting, and said, "O Allah's apostle, give your verdict according to Allah's laws in our case." Then his opponent got up and said, "He has told the truth, O Allah's apostle. Decide his case according to Allah's laws. My son was a laborer working for this person, and he committed illegal sexual intercourse with his wife, and the people told me that my son should be stoned to death, but I offered 100 sheep and a slave girl as a ransom for him. Then I asked the religious learned people, and they told me that my son should be flogged with 100 stripes and be exiled for 1 year. The Prophet said, "By him in whose hand my soul is, I will judge you according to Allah's laws. The sheep and the slave girl will be returned to you, and your son will be flogged 100 stripes and be exiled for 1 year. And you, O Unais, go to the wife of this man, and if she confesses, stone her to death." So Unais went in the morning and stoned her to death, after she had confessed. Volume 8, Book 82, number 822. Narrated by Abu Huraira and Said bin Khalid. The verdict of Allah's Apostle was sought about an unmarried slave girl guilty of illegal intercourse. He replied, "If she commits illegal sexual intercourse, then flog her, 50 stripes. And if she commits illegal sexual intercourse, after that for the second time, then flog her, 50 stripes. And if she commits illegal sexual intercourse for the third time, then flog her, 50 stripes, and sell her for even a hair rope." Ibn Shihab said, "I am not sure whether the Prophet ordered that she be sold after the third or fourth time of committing illegal intercourse." Volume 8, Book 82, number 823, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, "If a lady slave commits illegal sexual intercourse and she is proved guilty of illegal sexual intercourse, then she should be flogged, 50 stripes, but she should not be admonished. And if she commits illegal sexual intercourse again, then she should be flogged again, but should not be admonished. And if she commits illegal sexual intercourse for the third time, then she should be sold even for a hair rope." Volume 8, Book 82, number 824, narrated by Ash-Shaybani. I asked Abdullah bin Abi Awfa about the rajam, stoning somebody to death for committing illegal sexual intercourse. He replied, "The Prophet carried out the penalty of rajam?" I asked, "Was that before or after the revelation of Surat an-Nur?" He replied, "I do not know." Volume 8, Book 82, number 825, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. The Jews came to Allah's Apostle and mentioned to him that a man and a lady among them had committed illegal sexual intercourse. Allah's Apostle said to them, "What do you find in the Torah regarding the rajam?" They replied, "We only disgrace and flog them with stripes." Abdullah bin Salam said to them, "You have told a lie. The penalty of rajam is in the Torah." They brought the Torah and opened it. One of them put his hand over the verse of the rajam and read what was before and after it. Abdullah bin Salam said to him, "Lift up your hand." Where he lifted it, there appeared the verse of the rajam. So they said, "O Muhammad, he has said the truth. The verse of the rajam is in it, Torah." Then Allah's Apostle ordered that the two persons, guilty of illegal sexual intercourse, be stoned to death, and so they were stoned, and I saw the man bending over the woman so as to protect her from the stones. Volume 8, Book 82, number 826, narrated by Abu Huraira and Zaid bin Khalid. Two men had a dispute in the presence of Allah's Apostle. One of them said, "Judge us according to Allah's laws." The other, who was more wise, said, "Yes, Allah's Apostle, judge us according to Allah's laws and allow me to speak first." The Prophet said to him, "Speak," he said, "My son was a laborer for this man, and he committed illegal sexual intercourse with his wife, and the people told me that my son should be stoned to death. But I have given 100 sheep and a slave girl as a ransom, expiation, for my son's sin." Then I asked the religious learned people about it, and they told me that my son should he flogged 100 stripes and should be exiled for 1 year, and only the wife of this man should be stoned to death. Allah's Apostle said, "By him in whose hand my soul is, I will judge you according to Allah's laws. O man, as for your sheep and slave girl, they are to be returned to you." Then the Prophet had the man's son flogged 100 stripes and exiled for 1 year, and ordered Unais al-Aslami to go to the wife of the other man, and if she confessed, stone her to death. She confessed and was stoned to death. Volume 8, Book 82, number 827, narrated by Aisha Abu Bakr, came to me while Allah's Apostle was sleeping with his head on my thigh. Abu Bakr said to me, "You have detained Allah's Apostle and the people, and there is no water in this place." So he admonished me and struck my flanks with his hand, and nothing could stop me from moving except the reclining of Allah's Apostle on my thigh. And then Allah revealed the divine verse of Tayammum. Volume 8, Book 82, number 828, narrated by Aisha Abu Bakr, came towards me and struck me violently with his fist and said, "You have detained the people because of your necklace." But I remained motionless as if I was dead lest I should awake Allah's Apostle, although that hit was very painful. Volume 8, Book 82, number 829, narrated by Al-Mughira Sa'd bin Ubadah said, "If I found a man with my wife, I would kill him with the sharp side of my sword. When the Prophet heard that, he said, Do you wonder at Saad's sense of ghira, self-respect? Verily, I have more sense of ghira than Saad, and Allah has more sense of ghira than I. Volume 8, Book 82, number 830, narrated by Abu Huraira. A Bedouin came to Allah's apostle and said, My wife has delivered a black child. The Prophet said to him, Have you camels? He replied, Yes. The Prophet said, What color are they? He replied, They are red. The Prophet further asked, Are any of them gray in color? He replied, Yes. The Prophet asked him, Whence did that grayness come? He said, I think it descended from the camel's ancestors. Then the Prophet said to him, Therefore, this child of yours has most probably inherited the color from his ancestors. Volume 8, Book 82, number 831, narrated by Abu Burda. The Prophet used to say, Nobody should be flogged more than 10 stripes except if he is guilty of a crime, the legal punishment of which is assigned by Allah. Volume 8, Book 82, number 832, narrated by Abdur Rahman bin Jabir. On the authority of others, that the Prophet said, No punishment exceeds the flogging of the 10 stripes, except if one is guilty of a crime necessitating a legal punishment prescribed by Allah. Volume 8, Book 82, number 833, narrated by Abu Burda al-Ansari. I heard the Prophet saying, Do not flog anyone more than 10 stripes, except if he is involved in a crime necessitating Allah's legal punishment. Volume 8, Book 82, number 834, narrated by Abu Huraira. Allah's apostle forbade al-wisal, fasting continuously for more than 1 day without taking any meals. A man from the Muslims said, But you do al-wisal, O Allah's apostle. Allah's apostle, I said, Who among you is similar to me? I sleep, and my Lord makes me eat and drink. When the people refused to give up al-wisal, the Prophet fasted along with them for 1 day, and did not break his fast but continued his fast for another day. And when they saw the crescent, the Prophet said, If the crescent had not appeared, I would have made you continue your fast for a 3rd day, as if he wanted to punish them, for they had refused to give up al-wisal. Volume 8, Book 82, number 835, narrated by Abdullah bin Umar. Those people who used to buy foodstuff at random, without weighing or measuring it, were beaten in the lifetime of Allah's apostle if they sold it at the very place where they had bought it, till they carried it to their dwelling places. Volume 8, Book 82, number 836, narrated by Aisha. Allah's apostle never took revenge for his own self in any matter presented to him till Allah's limits were exceeded, in which case he would take revenge for Allah's sake. Volume 8, Book 82, number 837, narrated by Sa'al bin Sa'd. I witnessed the case of Lian, the case of a man who charged his wife for committing illegal sexual intercourse when I was 15 years old. The Prophet ordered that they be divorced, and the husband said, If I kept her, I would be a liar. I remember that Az-Zubair also said, It was said, that if that woman brought forth the child with such and such description, her husband would prove truthful, but if she brought it with such and such description looking like a wara, a red insect, he would prove untruthful. I heard Az-Zubair also saying, Finally she gave birth to a child of description, which her husband disliked. Volume 8, Book 82, number 838, narrated by Al-Qasim bin Muhammad. Ibn Abbas mentioned the couple who had taken the oath of Lian. Abdullah bin Shaddad said to him, Was this woman about whom Allah's apostle said, If I were ever to stone to death any woman without witnesses, I would have stoned that woman to death? Ibn Abbas replied, No, that lady exposed herself by her suspicious behavior. Volume 8, Book 82, number 839, narrated by Ibn Abbas. Lian was mentioned in the presence of the Prophet. Asim bin Adi said a statement about it, and when he left, a man from his tribe came to him, complaining that he had seen a man with his wife. Asim said, I have been put to trial only because of my statement. So he took the man to the Prophet, and the man told him about the incident. The man, husband, was of yellow complexion, thin, and of lank hair, while the man whom he had accused of having been with his wife was reddish-brown with fat, thick legs and fat body. The Prophet said, O Allah, reveal the truth. Later on, the lady delivered a child resembling the man whom the husband had accused of having been with her. So the Prophet made them take the oath of Lian. A man said to Ibn Abbas in the gathering, Was that the same lady about whom the Prophet said, If I were to stone any lady for committing illegal sexual intercourse to death without witnesses, I would have stoned that laid to death. Ibn Abbas said, No, that was another lady who used to behave in such a suspicious way among the Muslims that one might accuse her of committing illegal sexual intercourse. Volume 8, Book 82, number 840, narrated by Abu Huraira. The Prophet said, Avoid the 7 great destructive sins. They, the people, asked, O Allah's Apostle, what are they? He said, to join partners in worship with Allah, to practice sorcery, to kill the life which Allah has forbidden except for a just cause, according to Islamic law, to eat up usury, riba, to eat up the property of an orphan, to give one's back to the enemy and freeing from the battlefield at the time of fighting, and to accuse chaste women who never even think of anything touching chastity and are good believers. Volume 8, Book 82, number 841, narrated by Abu Huraira. I heard Abul Qasim, the Prophet, saying, If somebody slanders his slave and the slave is free from what he says, he will be flogged on the day of resurrection unless the slave is really as he has described him. Volume 8, Book 82, number 842, narrated by Abu Huraira and Zaid bin Khalid al-Juhani. A man came to the Prophet and said, I beseech you to judge us according to Allah's laws. Then his opponent, who was wiser than he, got up and said, He has spoken the truth, so judge us according to Allah's laws, and please allow me to speak, O Allah's Apostle. The Prophet said, Speak. He said, My son was a laborer for the family of this man, and he committed illegal sexual intercourse with his wife, and I gave 100 sheep and a slave as a ransom for my son. But I asked the religious learned people regarding this case, and they informed me that my son should be flogged 100 stripes and be exiled for 1 year, and the wife of this man should be stoned to death. The Prophet said, By him in whose hand my soul is, I will judge you in this case, according to Allah's laws. The 100 sheep and the slave shall be returned to you, and your son shall be flogged 100 stripes and be exiled for 1 year. And O Unais, go in the morning to the wife of this man and ask her, and if she confesses, stone her to death. She confessed, and he stoned her to death.